Another group of questions that you're going to get are positive or negative questions. Oftentimes, you'll start with the interviewer asking you to tell me about a time XYZ. So we can group all these questions into positive or negative questions. So what do we mean by that? Positive questions are going to get you to talk about some sort of positive quality in yourself or some sort of positive, outcome that you have encountered during your life. A negative question is going to get you to talk about, a weakness or some area of improvement that you're working on or some sort of negative outcome or scenario that you've encountered in your life. So again, it's hard to know exactly what type of question they're going to ask, but there's an easy way that you can start preparing for these. So some examples of positive questions might be, tell me about your greatest strength. Tell me about a time you've operated within a team. Tell me about a time you've achieved a goal, demonstrated leadership skills. Those are all positive questions. Negative questions might sound something like, tell me about your biggest weakness. Tell me about how you deal with adversity, how you deal with rejection. Tell me about a time you failed or faced a challenge. They're all getting you to talk about some sort of, negative or hardship that you've encountered in your life. So what we're going to look at is, how we can prepare for these types of questions, some examples, and how we break this down. So the best thing to do to prepare ahead of time for these questions is to have a bunch of stories in the back of your head that you can pull from during the interview process. So how do you do that? Well, pull out your resume or start writing down a list of all of the experiences you've had in your life. So for each job or experience, list or write down one thing you accomplished at that experience or at that job, and one challenge or struggle or issue you faced and how you overcame it. So this is going to give you a bunch of stories. You want about, anywhere from maybe like 5 to 10 stories in your head. You don't need too many, honestly. If you had, 6 or 7 stories, you could probably get away, or you could probably get by answering anything they throw at you. So for example, I might go down my list and think about, okay, I had a summer internship in high school. What's one thing that I accomplished that I'm proud of, and what's one, challenge or struggle I faced? Okay, cool. I also, had a, maybe I was in part of a club in college, or maybe I worked, a part-time job in college, or maybe I just took a couple hard classes in college. You can start to think about all these different experiences. If you had some work experience after school, you can think about the actual jobs that you've done and what you learned, some challenges and things that you accomplished. All you want to do here is start to create stories of these past experiences that you can pull in whenever you get asked any of these questions. So how do you create good stories? I'm going to break down, storytelling 101 here, but definitely check out our full-length video on storytelling. It's going to go into a lot more detail. So the first thing about storytelling, especially in the interview process, is you've got to make sure these stories are concise, 60 to 90 seconds. Remember, anything past that, you're going to lose the attention of the interviewer. So how do you do that? First of all, you got to stick to a good structure here. We're going to break that down in 1 second. The second thing is, once you get a story that you want to tell, write it down. Write it down, type it out, say it out loud over and over again. Time yourself, make sure it's within that 90-second mark so that you feel confident in the story. Once you feel like you've got a good story, a good structure, you can really adapt this story to any type of question they ask you. So let's go through an example here. What does the structure sound like? So a good structure is one where you actually start with a summary sentence. You can almost tell the storyteller, or you almost tell the listener what you're going to tell them. So you start with a summary sentence, kind of prime them on what you're about to talk about. Go into some quick background, characters that are involved in the story. This is the meat of it right here, is where you talk about the conflict. So like, what was the conflict that you faced, and how did you overcome that conflict through some sort of action that you took? So what did you do to beat that conflict, and then how did you resolve it, right? What was the end result, the outcome, and what did you learn or take away from it? So that's storytelling 101. We're going to look at a couple other examples here. So sometimes these negative questions really trip people up. So a question like, how do you deal with adversity? Or tell me about a time you failed, or tell me about a time you faced a challenge. So the best way to answer those, again, is start with a summary, talk about what you did to overcome it, and then quantify some sort of action or result that came out of it, and then summarize your learnings at the end. So, well, tell me about a time you failed. Okay, I failed at XYZ. Maybe I failed at a class. I lost the race. I didn't, get into the school I wanted to, whatever it is. What did you do to overcome that? So, I went and I worked extra hard on this. I trained to do this. I fixed A, B, and C. I went back and tried again. What kind of actions did you take to deal with that adversity? And then talk about the results. Next time I did a lot better, right? I got the A in the class. I made it, I got at my best time in the race. I got into the school of my dreams. Quantify what you did, after working at it. And then talk about the learning. I learned that you got to put in the effort. I learned that it's okay to fail as long as you learn from it and keep moving forward. I learned that practice makes perfect. Whatever learning you took away from it, sum it up so that you really tie a nice bow on it. That's a really good, easy formula to use for negative questions there. The other one that trips a lot of people up is tell me about your biggest weakness. And this can be really intimidating because you don't really know exactly what the interviewer is looking for in this answer. But two things that are always a good fallback. One is just talk about the lack of experience that you have in the role, right? You're applying for a role in some cases that you've never done before, especially if this is, your first job, especially if this is, you're switching careers. This might be a role that you just don't have experience in. So it's okay to call that out, almost like, talk about the elephant in the room here, and then address it in a way that is going to relieve any concern in the interviewer's eyes.